Welcome to Season 2 of Six Sad Lit, the podcast where we explore the literature that unsettles, provokes, and lingers long after the last page. I'm your host, Jen Eastwood, and I could not think of a more perfect way to launch this new season than with today's guest, who is one of my all-time favorite literary heroes and a true icon in the unhinged fiction space. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Mona Awad, one of the most inventive and genre-bending voices in fiction today. Mona is the award-winning author of 5 novels. Her debut, 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, won the Amazon Best First Novel Award and was shortlisted for the Giller Prize. Her iconic Bunny won the Ladies of Horror Fiction Best Novel Award and is currently under option with Bad Robot Productions. She followed that with All's Well and Rouge, an international bestseller which is also now in film development. And today is a very special day because her brand new novel, We Love You Bunny, is out now. If you remember Bunny, Mona's cult classic about lonely outsider Samantha Mackey and the terrifyingly sweet MFA clique that drew her into their monstrous world, this new book is a wickedly intoxicating counterpart. Part prequel, part sequel, We Love You Bunny begins with Sam on her book tour after publishing her first novel, only to be kidnapped by her old frenemies, the bunnies themselves. What follows is their side of the story. A phantasmagoric fairy tale slasher about creation, destruction, power, and love. Think Frankenstein by way of Heathers, dark academia, fever dream, and bunny mayhem at its best. In our conversation, Mona and I talk about returning to the Bunnyverse, the themes that haunt her writing, and how she crafts fiction that feels at once surreal, terrifying, and deeply true. So, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Mona. What compels you to write about transformation? So all of your characters go through some major transformation of the mind or body or the self. What draws you to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is kind of the core preoccupation of my novels, my work. I'm just fascinated by the idea that change is possible. And I think that's something that enchanted me when I was a kid, that change was possible. There were probably a lot of things I didn't like about myself, circumstances that I didn't like, that I wanted to change. And the fairy tale promises change, gives you that gift. But because it is still, for so many reasons, the fairy tale has this other side of transformation that it likes to present, this shadow side. I think I was also fascinated by that of course there would be a cost to wanting something that seems impossible, and so I was drawn to that. I was drawn to just the idea that we all want to evolve. We all want change to be possible for us. We don't want to just be confined to our circumstances and to what people tell us we can be. And so, my stories are interested in breaking those limits, pushing those boundaries, but also exploring the psychological and emotional ramifications of that, and the physical ones too. It's just always enchanted me, that idea.
So when did your interest in fairy tales begin? What's the first fairy tale that really resonated with you, and why do you think you were drawn to that as a writer?
Yeah, well, I still remember being really freaked out by Snow White. I mean, I do think Snow White really freaked me out. The witch terrified me, to my core. In the film, actually, the Disney film is the thing that, when you ask that question, that's sort of the first thing that comes to mind, because just visually it's such a striking film. The witch is truly so terrifying. The queen is just so darkly enchanting and also terrifying to a child, So I think that story was probably the first. It wasn't until later in my life, actually. And I read them as a child, and I remember metabolizing them and being fascinated by them, and being fascinated by The Wizard of Oz and by Alice in Wonderland, which I think are fairy tale adjacent. But it wasn't until a little bit later, in my 20s, when I discovered Hans Christian Andersen and Oscar Wilde, that I really became obsessed with the fairy tale, because the Brothers Grimm are fantastic. The stories are wonderful, but in terms of the language, in English and translation, they're not terribly exciting, and Hans Christian Andersen is a stylist, I mean, even in translation that comes through. There's just something about the narration that just feels so personal, so modern, and that it occupies the consciousness of the main character. You're with the Little Mermaid, in the ocean, wanting to be human. So So when I read those, and when I read the Oscar Wilde fairy tales, like The Nightingale and the Rose, my God, that's when I really got excited about actually working with the fairy tale in my own work. I think before then I felt like it was just not, I don't know, there was something about it that didn't feel quite accessible to me. It was only seeing what a stylist could do with it that I think I got really, really interested. And also just those stories are so heartbreaking, you know? They explore transformation in a way that I think really resonates with me. Again, like that dark side of transformation. Hans Christian Andersen is obsessed with that, of course. You know, all of his fairy tales, The Little Mermaid, the poor Little Mermaid, every step she takes will feel like knives for the rest of her life.
Oh my God.
I know.
Like having no voice is not bad
It's
enough.
not enough. Yeah, she's also gotta like suffer this profound pain for the rest of her life every time she walks. Yeah, it's horrifying, but there is something about that resonates psychologically, that like rings true, you know?
A through line that I've noticed with all your work, in addition to the fairy tale element, is that all of your protagonists are at odds with their bodies or their minds. So your narrators are often unreliable and sometimes delusional or dissociating. What draws you to this idea of the unstable mind as a narrative space, or how they almost, if it's not a physical ailment that's keeping them stuck, it's their own minds keeping them stuck in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I think because there's two reasons. One, I think it feels just very human to sort of chronicle that experience. I'm really interested in documenting the experience of consciousness, you know? And I think the idea of stability is a kind of a lie that we tell ourselves, you know? I mean, in our heads, we're probably going in a million different directions, even as we're choosing one. And so to me, it's just like, it's fascinating to sort of dig deeper into that and reveal everything that might be going on with a person in a particular moment in their lives. And then the other piece is that I think it's the voice locking into that instability, or that potential for instability that's always going on in our own heads, in our lives, is the way into the surreal. You know, that's where it becomes possible, is kind of going into that space where we're not quite sure. We're not quite sure what we're doing. We're not quite sure what's going on in a given moment. We're not quite sure if we're imagining like a menace that might be there in front of us. If, like, for example, you're in pain and you're talking to a doctor and they're not really internalizing your experience of pain. Are they a monster, or are they just checked out, or what is the story, right? You could spin that so many different ways. And so to kind of lock into someone's personal experience of that, and lock into that subjectivity, is kind of the way into going into the unreal realistically. So that's why I think I do it, because I just think it's like, it's both a way into the real and a way into the surreal at the same time.
I found Miranda's experience so, oh my gosh, really painful to read, and so relatable as a woman, even though her struggle in the book is around the chronic pain from an injury. I think for so many women who have terrible pain and aren't believed, it was all too real and very satisfying for me to watch people get to experience a little bit of what she went through. Yeah. I've read that for you, when you wrote that, it was in part due to your own experience with chronic illness after an injury and rehabilitation. Did it bring you any sense of peace, or any closer to finding a bit of catharsis within your own experience?
Yes and no, you know, and that's the case for every book that grapples with something that I've experienced. You know, it usually, those books, and All's Well is one of them, was inspired by a moment of powerlessness with a doctor, where I just felt like, this is it. Like, I'm always going to come up against this brick wall that's going to turn it back on me and make it about, you know, my head, as opposed to just potentially helping me find a way forward. And that this is often the path of recovery for most people. It's just like filled with people who just, basically they're helpless, you know, and maybe even get frustrated with you because they feel helpless. And when I had that experience, I thought, yeah, okay, I am gonna write about this. And that is going to help. It's going to give language to this moment where I truly had no language. I had no recourse. And maybe that will be empowering to actually give language to this experience in fiction. And it did. But, you know, in moments when I have pain, or I'm still grappling with pain, am I glad I wrote that book? Yes, very, very glad. Does it always help me through my own experiences of like pain? Well, no, that's part of the reason why I wrote it, is because it truly is very, very difficult to live with pain, right? So I guess I just feel peace that I gave language to something that I think a lot of people deal with. And that helps me. That does help me.
How was the reception of that book in terms of, did people reach out to you who felt seen by Miranda's experience?
Yes, yes. And it was an odd time, too, for the book to come out. It was, it was during the pandemic. I don't think anyone was especially interested in hearing about pain, which I completely understand. But, like a year later, I would say, especially when I was on tour for Rouge, that's when I really met so many readers who were, very attached to that book. And in fact, more attached to it than Bunny, I would say. There's like a whole legion of readers who really love All's Well. Because they connect to that, either because they have a connection with theater or pain or both. Because I really do think there are so many connections between those two worlds, the world of theater and the world of pain, believe it or not. So yeah, that was really lovely. And then, and I actually, a lot of doctors would reach out to me and tell me that they connected with it too, and it helped them understand their patients a little bit more, which was great.
I feel like is a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
It really resonated with me from a mental health perspective, because I have been stuck on an antidepressant for 12 years, literally stuck on it. No practitioner, like I see a private psychiatrist, which I am privileged enough to be able to afford, and even he does not know how to safely get me off it, because they don't believe. And it's not just me, like there's an entire subreddit dedicated to, and a website dedicated to supporting people who are trying to withdraw safely from this drug. I've read heroin addicts say it's harder to come off this drug than it is to come off opiates.
Wow. Oh my God.
Nobody believes us. No doctors, no psychiatrists believe us. Every single time you try to safely withdraw and you have really bad withdrawal symptoms, they say that's just evidence that you need to keep taking it, as though it's like a psychiatric issue rather than a physiological issue. And so all of the experiences I've had being dismissed by healthcare professionals, that's how I could really relate to it, because it was the same thing of like, well, it's your problem or it's your fault. Like, okay, well, other people don't have an issue coming off of this drug, so it must be you.
Yeah. I know. It's kind of, isn't it incredible to kind of come up against that, like, I can do nothing for you. So instead of admitting that, what I'm going to do is make you feel responsible for it.
Yeah. Yes. This could be an opportunity to be like, oh shit, we need to learn more about this. Like, I can't help you, or I've reached the capacity of what I can do for you.
Yes.
This is a problem. Let us study this and figure out why.
Yeah.
If it was men,
I know. This is the thing. This is really, you've hit the nail on the head. I think that's the issue. It's predominantly, still an issue that women grapple with, and so men just, I don't
care.
Yeah, don't care. Yeah.
It's very rare I don't think I've ever really heard of a man struggling with chronic pain. The single exception might be Stephen King, who had that terrible car crash and sort of was never the same. But other than that, don't really hear of men having to, especially not as often as women who suffer from endometriosis and similar issues.
I think we're more inclined to actually experience it, like biologically. What I've read, or that our experience of it might be just different. And so I think that's part of it, is that it may not be the same kind of issue for men, and so it's not taken as seriously because it's not something that they grapple with in quite the same way. Yeah.
This leads quite nicely into my next question, which is the body, in particular, the female body, is always in flux in your work. Why do you think horror is such a useful tool for writing about beauty, desire, shame, transformation, these sorts of issues?
Yeah. I guess because they're just, the way to beauty is just paved with thorns. I mean, I don't know. I just think all of that stuff, like, femininity in so many ways, or like idealized notions of femininity, are so impossible. They're such intangibles. And then they're so fraught because who came up with them? You know, is it us? Is it someone else? Like, who came up with this notion?
It's a tax on women. I swear to God. I watched a
Yes.
really interesting video essay recently about how it's just another way of keeping women in their place, because we have all these things we need to do and all these rituals to perform before we leave the house. And my boyfriend will be like, oh, I better just put shoes on. Whereas me, I have to plan like 2 hours in advance if we're going somewhere. I hate it.
No, I hate it too. No, I know. Like there are times when I really resent it. Like every time I get a manicure, I'm annoyed. And I'm not saying I'm I'm the only kind of person who gets a manicure, but I kind of resent it, and I also feel like this is like time and money and energy. It's not my favorite thing to do at all. I would much rather spend my time in a different way. And so yeah, I think that you know, it's that idea of like it's imposed on us, but then we grow up in it, so we are also like kind of wired, or at least I'll speak for myself. I was wired to desire being that in some way. It's deep in my blood, just like fairy tales. You know, I just absorbed it, and so I aspire to it. I do think there are beautiful things about it, about these ideals of femininity, lovely things, you know, and so it's just feels like a weird sort of, it's both a dream and a prison in all these different ways, and it's, you know, definitely part of you know, the experience of being marginalized and oppressed. There's no question about that. And so I kind of try to give language to it all. You know, language that celebrates kind of the beauty of these aspects of femininity, but also the shadow side, the horror, the fascism, you know, all of these things at the same time. Because I am truly enchanted by beautiful things. I can't help it, you know. I mean, I am, and so I understand that there is power in beauty, and our ideas of what is beautiful. Absolutely, they have a kind of power over us that maybe even language doesn't have, because it's so immediate, you know? And so I write from that place of being enchanted, but also feeling like it's a problem too. So it's like both at the same time. And my work kind of comes at it from both directions.
I think it can be both too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat as you. I am in equal parts enchanted by it, and I love indulging in it. And each night, my skincare routine is a special wind down period to me.
Yes.
I enjoy it very much, but then I also resent it for
Yes.
the fact that we have to do that. And again, my partner doesn't even wash his face before he goes to bed at night. And I'm like, take issue with that. But I think it's okay to feel both ways. I really enjoyed Rouge for this reason, because I was also watching skincare videos during the pandemic. I got really into watching like those ASMR facials, like where
Never watched those.
JD Wadey 180 is the actual goat. She is amazing.
check her
Like,
out.
oh my God. It was like experiencing it myself, and I got really into that rabbit hole for a while there. No
Yeah.
pun intended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, there is something very intimate about it. I mean, there's something deeply intimate. That was what drew me almost more than the skincare. It was just that it's just like a little secret between you and I. You're gonna like take care of yourself in a new way.
Yeah. And in that way, that intimacy is quite unique because of the world we live in, where increasingly things are done by AI, or like everything is about needing to interact with another human less and less often. But beauty is the one thing that will require, if you're going to have a procedure, another person to be there for it to work.
I mean, there's something about those skincare videos. There's a kind of like there's a maternal thing happening there, like permission to take care of yourself, permission to take these moments, permission to spend this, you know, money that perhaps you shouldn't. I mean, I did not have the means to purchase the skincare that I purchased that eventually led to me writing Rouge. And that's what I found so frightening. I was like, wow, I really truly can't afford this, and I can't stop making these purchases because this woman with a very particular kind of voice is telling me that perhaps I should consider it.
That it will make your dreams come true and stop
Yeah.
you from dying.
Yes, and it is very fairy tale. There is that promise of transformation that's like just inherent in just exploring skincare regimes. It appealed to me immediately. Again, did that book help my addiction at first and help me kind of come to some kind of understanding about how skincare and is ultimately just about death? Yes. But is it with me every day when I'm taking care of my skin or feeling anxious about my skin? No, not necessarily. Has it saved me? Maybe not. But I loved writing it. I mean, I loved writing that book. So
thinking about 13 Ways and Rouge as well, the question of how women see themselves and how they are perceived by others is quite central. Because the books were written quite far apart, how has your relationship to that theme evolved across your books and over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I wrote 13 Ways, I was very committed to realism. Like, one of my idols at the time, and he's still one of my idols, is the film director Mike Leigh. I love his films, and I love the way that he arrives at his stories, like with the characters improvising. Just the dialogues are so alive in those movies, I think, and the characters feel so alive, I think, because of his approach to writing. And I was really inspired by that, and I really wanted my stories to feel like a Mike Leigh movie. I really did. And it was something I really cared a lot about, because I just felt like there wasn't a book about body image that I felt was as honest as I wanted a story to be, and as wide-ranging too, about the experience of dealing with body image and different points in a potential transformation as well. So yeah, I mean, it was all about just being realistic in my portrayals of those relationships, those dynamics that sort of inform your feelings about your own body, with your mother, with your friend, with your lover, etc., in the changing room. But there was one story in that collection, because I guess it's a short story collection and a novel. It's called My Mother's Idea of Sexy. And in that story, the character does kind of go into a bit of a dream state. It's a more surreal story. It's probably I think it's the last one I wrote. And it's the one that excited me the most, because it plays in this other space. It's not quite reality. And it felt to me like because it goes into that space, it felt like the most honest one out of all of them. I mean, they're all honest. I worked so hard on those stories to make them as honest as I could. But that one, I just gave me like such joy, like when I was writing it, even though it goes to a pretty dark place. And I think I realized in that story what I wanted to do in the future. Is I wanted to lean more into that kind of headspace and give myself permission to go into the surreal. I'd always been interested in fairy tales. I'd always been interested in surrealism. I just didn't know how to work it into having a character who is also believable. Like, you can really feel like there's a stake for them in the real world. Like, I believe this is a person, I wanted both. And so in that story, I think I kind of learned a little bit how I might do that. And then I wanted to go deeper and deeper. So Bunny goes completely into the surreal. So does All's Well. So does Rouge. But I feel like I use the surreal to amplify the real, what this character is really grappling with in the real world. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Bunny, because that's what I'm going to get into next.
Yes.
Just thinking about 13 Ways, I really found I had to take my time with it. And actually, this is true of all your work. It is so immersive and so emotionally charged, and you do such a great job of like balancing tension with emotion and heartbreak. I feel like I am the character, that I can't rush through it. It's too much. I want to be able to experience it properly. I want to be able to take my time and really understand what that character's feeling. And I really found that with 13 Ways. I would read one story each day basically, and then one or two maybe, depending on how long they were, and then sit with that and like reflect on that and think about how Lizzie was feeling. It was also really interesting to read from you something that was more grounded in realism. It was really fascinating to read, especially more of a vignette style.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I really loved writing those dressing room stories.
I feel like every woman can relate to that too, right? Obviously, like the bigger you are, the worse it is, but like...
I know. And then just the sometimes there isn't a mirror, which I think is the most sadistic thing. When they have it outside and you have to go outside of the dressing room, and then there's obviously people there waiting to like watch you watch yourself. And even if you're horrified, their job, of course, is to convince you that no, this is actually working for you. It's good. It's horrible to manage that and manage like the horror of what you're seeing in the mirror, like in front of others.
And you're so vulnerable.
You're so vulnerable.
Absolutely the worst. Just to add another layer on that is when the shop has really loud music, like party music, and it's like overstimulating and embarrassing. I'll just go home.
I know. This is like online shopping is the best.
I agree. I know my measurements. I bought a measuring tape, and I think everybody in the world should buy a measuring tape. It has changed my life. The only exception is I'm quite short. I'm 5'4", so if I'm getting anything full length, like a maxi skirt or a maxi dress, I have to try that shit on first, because otherwise it'll come down to my feet, and that's not practical. But I so highly recommend everybody get a measuring tape, know your measurements, and then you can kind of avoid a lot of pain before you even get started if you can read the size charts.
Yeah, I think that's so wise, and I actually should really do that myself, given how much I online shop. My God.
And size charts are bullshit. Like the labels, like the actual, that's such bullshit. I would way rather they actually, instead of like putting like a S, M, large, whatever, just give me like a size range, like define it within a size range. Like that would be so much less horrifying. Instead of being like, oh shit, I thought I was a medium, but maybe I'm a large or whatever.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's humiliating.
It is. Yeah. It's just a series of mortifications. That's what it is.
Yeah, girlhood.
Yeah, I know. It was so fun to write about. But there's so much narrative potential in just the whole have a dress, go into a dressing room. The hope, the possibility of transformation, that's there again. The possibility of transformation in a super mundane way, but it's there. And then you go in and you put the dress on and oh my God, either
and it's a fun house.
Yeah, it's a fun house. It's like, it could be a horror, or it could be, sometimes there's a magic dress.
Yeah, yes.
Sometimes there's a dress that just takes care of you.
Can you remember your magic dresses?
Yes, I can. I wore one to death. And then I searched, once it was like threadbare, I searched all over eBay for another one. And that dress came and it was not the same.
Oh, no.
I know. It wasn't the same. It's weird. I just think, who knows? Our bodies are constantly changing, but I don't know what it is. But yeah, there are some things that just like a dress, just little details of like construction that can either make it magic or make it like horrible. And those magic ones, my God. But then you could end up just becoming too reliant on it, and then you like wear it all the time, and then it just, falls apart. There's that great movie, In Fabric. It's a horror movie, an English horror movie. It's great. And it's about a red dress that kills people. But what I love about the dress is the woman who plays her, I think it's Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who is like a Mike Leigh actress. She's in it, and in the film she puts on this red dress, and it's like, it looks like magic on her, but then it kills her. So.
That's sad.
I know.
Do we not get to have just one dress that we like?
I know. But I am obsessed with that. Clothing is so important in my books because I really do think that's like an everyday thing that we have to engage in, just clothing, that also has that possibility to name us, to like change us, to make us feel wonderful, to make us just feel deflated, clothing is so charged and powerful. My God.
Also, I realized I should have led with this. Congratulations on We Love You, Bunny. You amaze me. Your brain, I just cannot believe what is going on in there. It's absolutely amazing. I think it's possibly my favorite work from you. Can't wait for the world to read it. I should have said that at the very start, but I'm saying it now.
No, you're totally fine. I'm very happy to hear it. I loved it so much. I still miss it so much.
It's so interesting because Bunny has become like this massive cult classic, right? Like I heard about Bunny. When did I first read it? I actually read it last year for the first time. And I remember reading it, and I had never read anything like it before. Before I could give it a rating, I had to just set it down and go and sit with it. And I couldn't stop thinking about this book. Why do you think that this book in particular has struck such a nerve?
Is it because people like bunnies, maybe? I don't know. Maybe it's that simple. I don't know. I mean, there are other books with rabbits in them, of course. I think that one of the things might be... but I don't know that that's what it is the bunnies they're kind of an unusual clique. You know, yes, they're mean girls, Heathers. You can read that on the surface, but they're a lot deeper than that. You know, like they're really fucking powerful, and they are very hyper feminine, but like it's not something that makes them stupid, or you know, the way that it's normally portrayed. I think that they are, you know, when girls are really into the feminine, they're kind of like dumb or whatever. These girls are not dumb, and they're very powerful and smart. They're a force to be truly contended with. And so I think there's something, even though I know they're the villains, I think there's something very empowering about that, maybe. And then I think that there is that other side of experience that's also happening there. I mean, yes, the bunnies are, you know, powerful, feminine, strange, and that's interesting. But I mean, the other thing that's going on is, of course, Sam. You know, Sam is a total outsider, and it's like, again, trying to like, which is something that I think is like my kind of overall interest in storytelling, is giving language to different kinds of experiences of alienation. And Sam's is a really, really profound one. I mean, she is very lonely, you know, and she has this relationship to her imagination. Her imagination is what gives her a sense of companionship. And I think a lot of readers and misfits can really relate to that, just how the imagination can be a friend. And in Bunny, it's a literal friend. So I don't know, I think for readers that might be something that they really connect with. But I am guessing, I don't know why Bunny connected with as many people as it did. I can only say what it might be. But I think, you know, finally the last thing might be just that the message is that love is love. You know, whether it's imagined or not, it's still real. And I think readers connect with that too.
Did you have an imaginary friend growing up?
Yeah, I think I did probably. You know, I mean, I don't think that I like thought she was real or anything, but yeah, I think she was kind of like shape-shifty throughout, you know, my childhood for sure. I did. But I think I got so much delight when I would write two characters kind of talking to each other. That was like such a source of infinite delight for me. Like what they might say to each other, what might happen as a result of this conversation between these two people. That was like a way to kind of have a friend, you know, was to just imagine these like different scenarios. So yeah, I really relate to Sam, you know. That's definitely my experience of creativity, for sure. And I think, you know, there's like kind of a warning there maybe, but I don't know that it's really much of a warning. You know, that you can lose yourself in the creative process. You can lose yourself to the point where you might not even realize that you have imagined this person that is with you, you know. And I kind of love that. I love that she is that way. Because the bunnies totally over-control their material. Yeah, which is why the bunny boys don't have dicks. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I had an imaginary friend growing up.
You did?
And I did. And her name was Bobby. And she had spiral curls, blonde spiral curls, and blue eyes. And I would play with her all the time. She was very, very, very real to me.
Yeah.
Mum said I truly would behave as though there was an actual human child in the room with me and with me. She kind of disappeared, obviously, as I got older. Like this was probably when I was under 10 years old, like 10 years and under. And then she kind of slowly just faded into the background, faded away from my life, like when I didn't need her anymore, I guess, or when I grew out of imaginary friends. But to me, she was as real as Ava was to Sam.
Yeah.
So it's interesting too, because I've read a lot recently in adulthood about how so much of what we are trying to do as adults now is find our way back to our childhood instincts, even in clothing, like how we used to dress ourselves, and then we were told, no, you can't dress like that. And so now as adults, we're trying to find our way back to those instincts and whatnot. And so it's quite an interesting thing of like, for those of us that had imaginary friends as children and then we grew out of it, or we were told to grow out of it, was that creativity knocking on the door that we just squashed down, and what might have happened if we had let them stick around?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, right? Yeah, for sure. I love that you can remember her name.
She's very rare, like very vivid. Like I spent so much time with Bobby. So you wrote Bunny after your debut of 13 Ways, which is quite insane to me, because as you've already said, 13 Ways is quite rooted in realism, but you had dabbled with surrealism a little bit and My Mother's Idea of Sexy. And then from that to go to Bunny is quite the departure. So what was the process for you arriving at that shift? Like, was it difficult to allow yourself to write like that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was working on another novel that had a little bit of a surreal element, but it was mostly pretty realistic. And I wasn't really getting anywhere with it. And I remember I had this other idea kind of cooking in the back of my head, this bunny idea. And I was scared. I was really scared to write it because I just didn't know where it would lead me. I thought exactly that this book is going to have elements of horror, elements of fairy tale. Can I really do that? Am I even capable of going into the surreal? So it was super scary. I didn't know if I would succeed. And I remember giving, like, I have told this story before, but giving my pages to the agent that I had at the time. Didn't get the best response. And I remember feeling like, okay, well, that's it then. You've written your one book. You're done. Put this one away. I really thought that for quite some time. I gave up on it, actually, for a little while. I did. And then I just thought, well, fuck, I want to know what happens, So I'm going to just write it to see what happens. And that is it. That is all I'm going to do. And that was amazing. That was the most amazing experience, to just write it just to see what was going to happen and to truly I didn't really have any hope for it at that point. And that is where I now try to get in my head every time, to get to the place of possibility that opened up. Because I still miss the experience of writing Bunny. I think I had it again with We Love You, Bunny, and certainly I've had it in different ways with each book, All's Well and Rouge too. But it's like getting to that place where you just kind of let go of expectations, or what you perceive the expectations might be, and then just see what happens. See where you can go. See where the story leads you is so freeing. It's so freeing.
Did you, when you started writing Bunny, did you have an outline in mind, or like how much of it did you have in your head to begin with?
I had that it was going to be the school year, which is really crucial because that is quite a narrative spine. Right? Start in the fall, end with grad. I knew that. I knew it was going to start at this party, this reception, like for the students coming in. I knew that's how I would introduce the conflict. I knew that the bunnies did this thing, like off campus, that they had these little workshops where they conjured boys out of rabbits. I knew that. And I knew that my main character had a friend that didn't like them. I knew that. And I knew she was going to get sucked in to this bunny cult. So those were the set pieces. I knew I wanted a prom. Let's just throw in a prom there at some point.
Why not?
Have to have a prom. I was like, there needs to be a prom, like, even though they're in grad school.
It feels like something the bunnies would want.
Yes.
Absolutely. That chance to show off at a prom.
Right, and I knew there would be some kind of initiation, which turned out to be the smut salon. That's where they're testing her. They're kind of seeing, like, what can she do? What will she bring? So I knew initiation. These things I knew, but I didn't know necessarily how they would unfold. And so I just kind of, like, very, 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 like, loosely etched out maybe that opening trajectory to prom. And as I was etching it out and just kind of writing scenes and trying to figure out the voice, which really came pretty fast, I have to say, Sam's voice was quick. That's when I had the revelation about her friend. And when I had the revelation about her friend, which I did have about a month into playing around with it, which is so early, very early, I was so grateful for that revelation. And it came when I was in class, and I should have been paying attention, that I was like kind of sketching out the story. So, God, I'm so grateful I didn't pay attention in class that day and just wrote, because who knows if I would have had that revelation. And that revelation was the key to the whole fucking novel. Like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that I just didn't pay attention. So grateful, because I realized the thing, and it informed the whole telling of the story. So then I had that piece very early on too, that knowledge about Ava, which I won't say even though we've, it's been out for so long. And so, yeah, that's what I had. And then I would go, scene to scene, and then kind of just like a little bit more. I just always had like a little bit more that I was doing. I did quit about halfway through, I would say. Yeah, I quit halfway through. And then I picked it back up because I got that response from my agent at the time. So.
But you never stopped enjoying it. When you quit, it wasn't because you were bored of it.
No, it's because I thought that I couldn't do this. It's because I just thought I couldn't do it. I wasn't bored. No, no, no. I was completely preoccupied with it. I was obsessed. I was obsessed with it. I just felt like I didn't have the ability to do what I wanted to do. And then I just thought, well, fuck it, I'll just try. And that was a lot. That was my friends, you know. It was my partner and one of my dearest friends who's been my reader since college telling me, like, don't give up on this. This is good. Like, so you really do need any, like, you know, young writers out there. It's so wonderful to have a couple of friends who are good readers for you in those moments. I don't know what I would do without readers like that, you know, who are friends. Yeah.
You know, Stephen King threw Carrie in the trash
Yes.
and his wife fished it out.
Yeah.
And that is why we have Carrie today.
Yes, yes. I had a very similar experience. I was dealing with pain. I was like in very serious pain. At the time, I couldn't even you know, I could barely walk and stuff at the time. And I had given up on the book. And so I was really, really bummed. And my partner like read over the pages I had and was like, you got to finish this. This is really great. You know, let's just sit down and talk about it. And it helped, and I started working on it again, and then I did finish it actually that summer. Because
God, I'm glad he did. I'm so glad he talked you into it.
I know. So yeah, friends are very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, We Love You, Bunny, which comes out, I'm so excited to share this with the public this year. We Love You, Bunny is described as a prequel and a sequel, and somehow also works completely as a standalone, which is amazing. What was it like re-entering the Bunnyverse after all these years?
Oh my God. I'm so grateful I had it. I mean, I was so happy to be back in that world. I can't even tell you. Like, it was a fucking delight. I was just thrilled. I was thrilled to get to know the bunnies more. So thrilled. Their voices came to me almost instantly. I'm not saying that book didn't have challenges, because it absolutely did in terms of structure. But in terms of voice, no. The voices were just like right away, and they were delightful. And then, of course, you know, my bunny boy, whom we get to hear from, I fell in love with him. And that was,
I think we all fell in love with him.
yeah, I know. I'm so happy that that's true. He came to me when I was like in the grips of COVID, and I was like, you know, I was like, oh God, I got to write his voice now. What is it going to sound like? I don't know. I'm just going to try. And then it just came, and he came like almost fully formed, and it was really, I was so grateful. I was so grateful. And it was so wonderful. And yeah, I love that universe. I think I love that universe because it doesn't, even though it is like, everything is so high stakes for these artists, you know, of course it is, right? But it still doesn't take itself too seriously. Like, it's always ultimately winking at itself. And that's a great pleasure, you know, to be in that kind of world.
The world building in We Love You, Bunny is so uniquely immersive. It's equal parts dreamy and nightmarish. The prose is lush, and the emotional undercurrent is devastating at times. I was literally in tears throughout this book. It was so moving, and the horror was obviously very horrifying. But how did you balance that emotional intensity with the surrealism, and was it hard to keep those elements in tension?
That's a great, great question. I mean, ultimately, that's like my way of like dealing with the surrealism. I always want to come from a place of at least emotional, psychological realism. And I do that through voice. And so I just have to believe the voice. I just have to believe that this is a creature. I won't even say, you know, human in this case, but a creature that I believe that they are in the world, or in some kind of world. I believe that. I feel like, yeah, their life is something I buy into. Their concerns, their dreams, their worries, I believe them. And so just getting that, if I can get that, everything else will work. And I try to write from that place, like that's where I start. So the surreal will come in. The surreal elements will be determined by those characters and their consciousness, because that's how the surreal works. It's a mirror of our own consciousness, right? And so if I know that consciousness, then I can do it. And it is just determined by their own psychological reality, by their own fears and desires, which is something the fairy tale teaches you, right? So yeah, as long as I know that, or I have some sense of it, or their voice is telling me that, then I can do it.
In Bunny, we're deep inside Samantha's mind. She's
Yes.
alienated, spiraling, and uncertain about what's real. But
Yeah.
in the new book, it's the bunnies who get to tell their side. So, what possibilities opened up for you when you let them take control and narrate the story?
Oh, it was so great to be able to write Sam from another perspective. I mean, just the shade, the shade was so fun. It was
It's
so fun.
hilarious.
Yeah, just take the piss at her. That was great. I love doing that. I love like kind of stepping outside of one character's perception and sort of viewing them from another side. I discovered that I love that actually in 13 ways. And so this book gave me a chance to do that again, and that was just a joy. And it was also fun to dig into them and find out how they perceive themselves potentially as victims or heroes as opposed to villains. So they're kind of literally reframing the story. We have a new understanding of them. I have a new understanding of them, and so that was really, really delightful. Yeah, I think it just kind of opens up the bunnies. I don't think that they were simple in Bunny, but I think now you absolutely cannot dismiss them. Yeah.
I thought it was so interesting hearing their own individual stories and their
Yes.
perspectives, and how Sam in book one, like in Bunny, felt so isolated and alienated. And reading We Love You, Bunny, how they all feel that too. Like they all, in their own way, feel, even though they kind of operate as a unit in some sense, they all feel like they're not
Yes.
quite part of the group. Like, even though they're in the group, they all feel like they're not, they just don't perfectly click. And there's an element of performance in this friendship, which I think is really interesting. Like, I loved getting to know that about them. And it shows how they are so talented creatively, but they're so what's the word
Insecure.
I'm thinking of. Yeah, so insecure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just was very illuminating, I thought, to also see that, like, look at their actions in Bunny through that lens.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that that's true. There's like this illusion in Bunny that they're just like a hive. And that there is actually some truth to that, of course. They even talk about that in the book, but they are kind of also lonely. They're all each in their own like neuroses, for sure. Which is of course what's actually true of any group. Right? So you're still by yourself in your own head, which is a fraught place if you're an artist, for sure. Yeah.
It reminds me of, I mean, you touched on Mean Girls, but how in Mean Girls is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time.
yeah. Yeah.
And how even in the plastics, how Katie manages to like drive a wedge between them by playing to their insecurities. And that's where we get to see how they'd operated as a hive, but they all feel a fear of being on the outside. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely got that from the bunnies.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love that about them too. We kind of get to see their dynamics and how strange they are, and the true hierarchy that's there, because there's always a hierarchy, and there's definitely one who feels like she's the outsider. Absolutely. Surprise, surprise, who it is. Yeah.
In this book, Sam is now a published author, but she's been silenced by the bunnies to give them the stage to tell their side of the story. How much is I Love You, Bunny a book about power, who holds it, who tells the story, and who gets to control the narrative?
Yeah, well, I think it is totally about that. Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's kind of the thing that happens in stories all the time, right? The person who is telling the story is indeed controlling the narrative, is controlling your perspective of everybody in that world. And so I think the bunnies rightfully have a claim to being able to give voice to their own experience of Sam and their own experience of this thing that they were doing. They were the ones who were doing it, and she just kind of got sucked into their thing. Ultimately, it was their show, and so so they get to tell the story. But at the same time, they are also manipulating somebody and something, and he gets an opportunity to tell his story in spite of them. And I really love that, I love the idea of the story getting to tell its story.
Oh, I know.
Like that to me is, yeah. And that's the other thing, in Bunny, the Bunny Boys are just we are told who they are through the eyes of Sam, who really perceives them pretty remotely, you know? So to
This
get
amazing, remarkable thing.
yes, exactly. It's like she's reporting from a pretty remote place, but to be that close up to the experience of creation and then to be with the creation itself, yeah, I think is really powerful because I mean, my feeling is, and it's so hard, especially as a teacher of creative writing, to communicate this because it's something that we just all know intuitively. A story is either alive or it's not. You know, it's just, everybody knows that. You can almost feel it, like in your body when you're reading something. It's either alive or it's just not alive. And we don't know necessarily what makes something come alive or not come alive. It's like a whole bunch of things, right? But when something is alive, well, morally, there's like obligations around that suddenly, right? If something is truly alive. And that's literalized in Bunny. They are living creatures, these like creations, right? So yeah, just getting the opportunity to have him narrate that experience of being alive, but also being in the power of these girls, and then in the power of other artists, you know, that he encounters in his universe was really wonderful.
So we get to witness the birth of the bunnies, their bizarre creative rituals, and the forging of their friendship in the new book. How did you approach writing their origin story, and what surprised you the most about going back to the beginning?
Oh gosh. Well, just how insecure they truly were. I mean, I guess I kind of always knew that, but to actually be in their heads and experience that from the first person was really fun. And also like the delusion, like the levels of delusion were very fun. The Duchess is deeply delusional, of course she is, the most delusional of them all. She's great. I love her to bits. Yeah, I guess there was that. And then what surprised me, I guess, is just that, you know, I mean, I always knew they could do something beautiful, as they have always claimed that they could, but that I would fall in love with the creature was not something that I was expecting would happen, but it was good. I had an experience similar to theirs, and that was helpful for me in writing the story. It was helpful for me in writing his story, and it was helpful for me in writing them, articulating that. And also just, not just that, but making fun of it all as well. Like, it takes itself very seriously, but it also doesn't, you know, at the same time. So yeah.
This is a bit of an offshoot question, but it is such an interesting novel structurally with multiple different points of view, and every single one of them is an unreliable narrator.
Totally.
How did you sell the idea to your agent? Like, what did your agent think when you were like, I got this idea for a follow-up?
Yeah, I know. I mean, he was really into it. He was excited, and I gave him the first half of it, I think, pretty early on. So he heard he read all the voices, and he was really on board and thought it was really great. But I think how I framed it is, I think that's kind of like what you're getting at, which is a great question, because it is narratively, the structure is yeah, it's complex. There are these multiple narrators, and it's based on Frankenstein, really. Frankenstein has multiple narrators, like a story within a story within a story, and then we hear from the actual monster, the creature himself. Really wanted to have that be the structure for We Love You, Bunny, too. It just made so much sense, you know, that we would get to hear from each of them, you know, up close and personal, and then we would hear from the creation, and then we would go back to them, but maybe in a different way, and yeah, and hear from him. And I don't know, I knew that it had to be multiple voices in this book. I knew I wanted to break open that we that's there in Bunny. That's what I wanted. I wanted to kind of lift the veil that's in Bunny, because Sam can only perceive so much about them. They have a wall with her, you know, so getting behind that wall was crucial, I think, to this being like truly a book that gives you more and expands, you know.
This was a book that I couldn't rush because it was so interesting, and every single chapter got me thinking, and then thinking back to Bunny, and like everything made me look at that first book through a different lens and different perspective. Kind of to that point in the Bunnyverse, love and friendship are both transformational and also terrifying.
Yes.
Did you set out to write a horror story about friendship, or about love, or monstrosity, or both?
Yeah, both, absolutely. There's so much about love that is horrific, you know, especially when you love somebody or something that doesn't love you back, you know. The book deals a lot with unrequited love, which is a lot like being in a horror story, because your experience is never going to be reciprocated or validated. You're sort of possessed. It's like a possession story because you're not driving the bus anymore and you are just doomed to like have your own heart broken, right? That experience of losing yourself, being possessed, just not being able to find a place in reality where you can actually have your feelings validated is so horrific. And then the experience of someone else's love that you don't want is also can be horrific and scary and all of these things. So We Love You Bunny really plays with that. And it plays with the idea of what a friend is, which comes from Frankenstein too. The word friend in Frankenstein is so fraught. I want a friend. I'm going to kill my friend, my only companion. But just the horrors of intimacy, right? The horrors of like wanting closeness. But people never give you what you want. And then you can never be what people want you to be. And that's just the horror of being human, right? But we all want love.
And we kind of need it to survive, don't we?
Yes, absolutely, we do, but it's so fraught, yeah.
So the book explores the wonder and horror of creation itself. How much of your own experience with writing, especially as a woman, especially in academia, informs this metaphor of creation as both ecstatic and also violent?
Yeah, it really feels like it is, right? For me anyway, it usually does come from kind of a dark place. And that's what it's the darkness or the experience of darkness, the experience of powerlessness that usually activates the creative impulse for me. So it is usually born from darkness, and then to be honest about that thing, whatever it is, can feel really intense. Like when I was writing about pain and All's Well, it was hard. I wondered how I was going to do it. I really did. And then I discovered that it was funny. And when I discovered that it was funny, that was my way through. And that was part of the truth of it, because the humor just amplifies the absurdity and the horror, really. The humor really does that. But it also lightens things, and it makes it possible for us to be in this woman's head for as long as we are. And so, I think that that's it. It's like it's born from darkness, but then I find the light. As I'm writing. And that light is crucial, because if it was just dark, it wouldn't be true.
You talk about humor, and your books are so funny, and especially the bunnies. They are hilarious, really, really funny. How do you approach writing humor in all your work?
It's so funny. I've always had that impulse in me. I've always loved comedy so much. I just love it so much. And I think comedy is born of darkness. There's no question about that. But it truly is. Even the shape of comedy comes from darkness. It starts low, goes high, right? Miranda's literally on the floor of her office in the beginning of All's Well. She's literally on the floor in the dead of winter. And then it goes to spring, even though the ending is a little ambiguous in terms of where it lies. But that is the shape of comedy. And so I think it has darkness built into it, that tension that darkness brings, and then comedy releases it, by naming it sometimes. Just by naming it, you can laugh. Like when somebody names something that is actually really painful for you maybe, but because they articulated it exactly, you can actually have a release of tension because it's been named. Comedy gives us that gift. So that's, I think, why I use it, is because it's a way of really truly telling the truth of experience in a way that darkness can't. Just staying in darkness doesn't quite do,
The bunnies are extremely good at that, telling you how it is.
Oh, yes.
Naming something, being very honest.
Yes, being deeply honest. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I like that you would know where you stand with them. They're not like Regina George, who's like, oh my God, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it? And it's actually, it's the ugliest effing bracelet.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I feel like, they would just tell you that something's ugly straight away.
Yeah.
So when Sam goes from narrator in the first book to captive in the second, how did that change her presence in the story? And did writing her this way help you to see her differently?
Yeah, it really did. She became very funny to me. She was always funny to me, but because I was deep in her own mind, her pain was my pain, I was with her. I'm with you all the way to the end. And you have to commit like that to your character to get it right? So I knew she was funny, and the story, the first person still takes the piss, with her. Like, there's no question. But I think the bunny's perspective of her makes her even more funny, you know? And we still see her because she's told her story. So her humanity is not compromised by this. Ultimately, her voice isn't compromised by this experience because we've heard it. We have heard what she has to say about all of this. So the reader takes that with them, if they've read it, into their experience of Sam in this book. And so hopefully it's kind of delightful to see her getting read this way by them, I hope.
I feel like both books together show how seriously we take ourselves and how unserious we are to people outside of us. Sam takes herself so seriously in the first book. Yeah. And then so do the bunnies when they're telling their story. But to everybody else in their own, like in your own way, we are all so deeply unserious.
I know. It's like, well, Arius also reads them, right? He has like different names.
Yeah.
For stuff. Like and seeing them from his perspective is hilarious because that's, like that's a very unique perspective, right? So yeah, I just think that you're right. That's an opportunity to sort of zoom out and like see the bigger truth, which is always going to have that element of delight and comedy because you're literally shedding light. Yeah.
So to go back to the multiple different points of view and different unreliable narrators, how did you juggle that? How did you manage writing or navigate writing so many different voices and also weave through so many different themes throughout the book? There's dark academia, classical literature, romance, fantasy, fairy tales, thrillers, and so much more.
Yeah, I think each character kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of go at it a different way, which was good. They're so unique. Like, even though they're a hive, they really are very different, Creepy is really into the gothic and really into this idea of creativity is like communication with entities, so there really is this kind of ghostly fairy tale vibe to her, whereas I think Cupcake is definitely more retro. She's more like Austinian, Nancy Mitford, little prim, but she's got this darkness underneath, which feels very 50s, which she's really into the 50s and really into cinema, and so it's all about like surfaces, appearances, keeping up appearances. And so that was really interesting to bring that in because then there's that element of satire in there. And then, Vic is like a total performance artist, experimentalist, a shock artist, right? A provocateur. And that's where the book, I think, could get more into that, into like the way that the bunnies present themselves and their project as being so artistically important. Is it? I don't know. Everyone can be the judge. And the same is kind of going on with the Duchess. There's like the gravity of like, she thinks she's like God. And so she's like beyond all of them. She is God and can command the weather. And so she was so fun. So yeah, I mean, I think that the different themes and strains that are going on in the book, the different aesthetics and registers, is the result of these different voices kind of just getting woven into the text. But it was really fun to also write them as a we still, because that's a joy, when they all just kind of come together and they have one voice. And it's still like the four of them, I still believe that it's those four women. Absolutely. That was fun too. And then Arius is like, a product of their imaginings. So he is a strange, hybrid of all the texts and films that they have absorbed. And then their own, their own weird quirks, right? So that was super fun. So yeah, I think the themes get determined by voice. It always begins for me with voice. Voice is always what determines the whole shape of the thing.
Is that voice to you like literal in the sense of you can hear the character? Yeah, or is it more the... Right, okay. And who came to you first with this one?
Cupcake.
Or was it different? Cupcake.
No, Cupcake came first. Cupcake is my favorite. I love Cupcake. I think she's hilarious.
She is hilarious.
Yeah, and I relate to her a lot, I feel like. But yeah, she came first. They were, they were written in the order that they came to me, truly. But I knew the Duchess had to be last in that narration. That was important. And that also there was kind of a hierarchical order to it, except that Creepy Doll comes after. But I feel like if the two of them were like, me first, Cupcake would win that battle. Cupcake would get to tell the story first, and then Creepy Doll would have to go after, just because of the power dynamics between those two. But yeah, Cupcake came first, super strong, and she was the sharpest voice. The others they came after, and like I sat with them and I worked on them. Vic actually came pretty quickly too, I have to say. The Duchess took a little bit more time because she's tricky. You know, she's like more cryptic, more veiled, you know.
What I really loved was getting to hear the nuances of each of them, because obviously in Bunny, they're kind of acting as one, almost like one character. But it surprised me learning certain things about them and the nuances of their character and how different they were and yet how similar. I was thinking about something you said earlier about what makes a story come alive versus not come alive. And I was having this conversation with my partner. We're both big readers, which actually is kind of how we met in the first place. And we were talking about this, about like what makes a story stay with you. And my take on it is, or like what I've observed is the stories that really resonate or have me thinking about them and remembering key details after I've finished it. It's always about the characters and their interpersonal relationships and how fleshed out and developed those characters are. And it doesn't matter what genre or what setting. And actually a really good example of this is he's really into sci-fi, as is most men, but he also reads a lot of literary fiction as well. And he will treat sci-fi like a palate cleanser, kind of. And so he has read a ton of sci-fi, and he has arrived at the conclusion that women are the best science fiction writers. And the difference to me is that I find in a lot of cases, women are really, really good at writing character and creating really multi-dimensional characters. And especially in science fiction, where men writing women in science fiction is a crime. Like it is just horrendous. They are so bad at it. And so I feel like that is in my opinion, in my experience, like character and their believability to me is what makes a story feel alive and lives with me long after I've finished reading it.
I would completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I really get that from all of your books. Like you are just so good at writing character. And I think particularly in We Love You, Bunny, where there are so many characters, there's a huge cast of characters, both major characters and smaller characters, even the background characters at the frat party. They're all to me, they're so real and so believable that as I read your work, I can see it playing out like a movie to me. Like it's very, very believable. So you once called Bunny a rage book and All's Well a despair book. What kind of emotion? What kind of emotional engine do you think We Love You, Bunny runs on?
Oh, love. Yeah, love. With all its darkness and all its horrors. But yeah, I think the book is really about love. And also, you know, I mean, there's a rage there too, sure. You know, the bunnies have rage. They want their revenge. But
I think their rage is justified, to be fair.
I think it is.
Samantha did them dirty.
She did them dirty, and they are coming back, and they are telling their story. But yeah, I think the heart of it, I mean, ultimately, they're pining, you know, for this thing that they may never have again. And it is, of course, very real in Bunny. I mean, I think they truly miss Arius. And Arius has his own desire and his own love, you know, that gets explored in the story. But it's also a metaphor for falling in love with your creation as an artist and having to let it go, you know, which is very hard. You know, it was literally very hard for me with We Love You, Bunny. It was so hard to let this book go. It was very hard to let Bunny go. It was actually hard to let all 4 of them. 13 Ways, I think I was done. And I was like, yeah, you can take it. Publish it, please. But Bunny, All's Well, Rouge, We Love You, Bunny, especially We Love You, Bunny. But Rouge, too, was very hard, actually. I go through a period where it's very, very difficult for me to, like, post writing, to let go of occupying that space, because it's a friend. I mean, you know, Bunny really does explore my feelings about creativity. It's a friend, and then you kind of lose that friend. You lose that world, and you have to say goodbye. And it's a beautiful thing because you're sharing it with readers in the hopes that they will have a connection to it in some way. So it's beautiful, but it's heartbreaking. And so the bunnies are in mourning, you know. Yeah.
When did your love of words and writing start? Have you always been a writer?
Yeah, you know, I've thought a lot about this. I'm trying to like kind of pinpoint when it started. I think a couple of things happened when I was a kid. One is that I had like this really great teacher in like grade 5. It was grade 5, Mr. Barta, I remember. And he gave us like Edgar Allan Poe, who I adored, And he would also give us these writing assignments and have us read in front of the class. And so I read mine, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And I was like, "Oh my God, I could have an effect on an audience with my words." It was such a revelation to me as a kid, because I really felt I was so shy. And I really felt like very invisible, or visible in all the wrong ways. And so to be able to have an effect with words was a really big deal to me. And then I got really into Edgar Allan Poe when I was really sick with pneumonia. My mom bought me this illustrated copy of The Raven, which I read again and again. And I loved the illustrations. So yeah, I think that was it. It was Edgar Allan Poe, who I kind of honor in this book, and Mr. Barta's writing exercises. Yeah.
Wow. What a great teacher. I wonder if that teacher, I wonder if he knows where you, that was such a defining moment for you.
It really was. Yeah, it really was. And his enthusiasm that was genuine, that was really special to see. Yeah.
Now you are a academic yourself. What role does academia or literary theory play in your writing process? Are you ever actively resisting what you're trained to analyze? Does it make it harder or easier in your creative pursuits?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I had to read a lot of critical texts when I was doing my master's in fairy tale. It was a master's in English, but my dissertation was on the fairy tale. I had to read so much, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I had that experience of going to the library every day and reading these texts about fairy tale and what fairy tales mean and what they can do, and then also reading the primary sources at the same time. And then I had a similar experience when I was doing my PhD. I had to read pretty deeply about Shakespeare and about wonder and fiction, and again about fairy tale, because that's what I was looking at, those three things. And that was incredibly useful. That informed All's Well. That actually helped me finish Bunny in some ways, but not while I was reading it. Absolutely not. Later, when I had put all of that aside and didn't really have it at the front of my head anymore, did it come in useful in a more kind of just subconscious way. Not intentional, intuitive. That's when I think it helped me. Had I tried to write, I think right then, while I was in the midst of trying to do this other thing, I don't know that I would have been successful. I know that's not true for other writers. Some writers really feed off of that kind of interaction with theory. I don't, but I can't deny that it has benefited me now, now that I've kind of put it all away. And in my teaching, I'm really careful about how much I want to go into what makes a story work, because I don't know that breaking it all the way down is especially helpful. I actually do think that knowing too much is a problem, because you get too in your head and you become too cerebral about it. And the thing that makes a story come alive, as you said, is believability. Faith is not logical. Having faith in something is not a logical thing. So you can't logic your way to making somebody believe in your character. You actually have to do it through instinct. That's your most powerful tool. So not knowing is so important. It's so important that I'm actually really careful about what I'm reading when I'm writing.
I was going to ask you that, because
yeah,
every single person I've interviewed so far doesn't read while they're working on a project, which I find very interesting.
I do read, but I do it in different ways. I'll watch a Shakespeare play, or I might revisit something that I just have really enjoyed in the past. So I know it so well that it's like a friend. It'll be something like that, or if I feel like the book might in some way sort of inform something from the side, I'll pick it up. But yeah, I'm so careful about what I read when I'm writing. Some writers I know they're not, but a lot of writers are. Some writers don't, as you said, they don't read at all. And there are periods when I'm deep in a voice where all I do is I write, and then my engagement with art is that I'll just listen to music. That's what I'll do. Music is always helpful.
I was reading an interview that you did, I think it might have been with Bomb magazine a while back, and you were talking about how important music was to you during each of your different novels. And I was thinking you should release your Spotify playlists, because that would be amazing to hear what was accompanying you on the journey of each of your different books.
Yeah, they are public. I have a public profile, but it's like my name is not my name, so it would be very hard to find it. It's Lita Swand, and there's a couple of links on my Instagram profile. I think you can. I think I have the link up for We Love You Bunny, but I don't have a link up for anything else. But there is a playlist for Bunny and a playlist for All Is Well and a playlist for Rouge, and for We
I'm
Love.
gonna go hunting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
I
yeah,
am gonna go hunting.
they're so important to me, those playlists. They're like what I use to get the voice and get the world. More than books, more than reading. It's music because it's alive already and it's a world already and there's like an aesthetic there and a sensibility. And so if I know the music, I can actually kind of figure out a lot. Yeah.
Music is very important to me as well when I'm
Yeah.
writing
Yeah.
anything. I feel like it's so evocative and it
It's,
kind of draws something out of me emotionally
yeah.
that otherwise just feels repressed.
Yes, yes. Do you listen when you write?
Yeah, I
Me too.
like it. I have like a certain playlist.
Yeah.
I actually, if I've got a project, I will make a playlist for that project.
Yeah, same.
And they have to be they are different because like while I kind of gravitate towards the same kinds of artists, the playlists are different depending on what it is and what the tone is
Yeah.
and what I think the
Same.
main character would listen to.
Yes.
So, how has your relationship to the craft of writing changed between 13 Ways as your debut and now with We Love You Bunny? What's gotten easier or harder, or how you feel about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that I was saying earlier is probably true of this, and that is that I am more aware of how I'm read. Of course, how could I not be? I mean, I don't, I don't go out of my way to read reviews just because I don't want the language in my head when I'm sitting down to write. I think that would be so paralyzing. So I try not to. It is inevitable. I'll get quotes from my publisher and things will come in. I mean, it's in many ways unavoidable. But those managing that, putting that like aside, the more that you accrue is challenging. So there's that. That's a challenge. What's gotten easier? Acceptance that it's a process and that every book will have its challenges. Every book will bring me to my knees. Like every book will bring me to a place where I feel so stupid and like a failure and like I truly cannot do it and like I should give up. Every book will do that to me, maybe multiple times. And I'll have to contend with that, like my own sense of limits and stuff, and then try to push past it. So I know that now. And it shows, I know that it will show up differently each time, but it will always show up. And just being aware of that, I think, is helpful. Like, right, but I don't know. I mean, you could tell that to me now and what I'm working on now, and I just think, oh my God, I suck. Like, I'm the worst. Like, I'll never get this to work, you know? Yeah. I can tell myself till I'm blue in the face, well, you felt this way before. But I'm like, no, this is different. This is the different one. This is the one where I truly suck. This is the one where I truly fail. This is the one where I never be able to, make it work. So, yeah, but I do think I'm more aware. I can tell myself that now. When I was working on Bunny, I couldn't, which is why I quit for a number of months. I did quit for a number of months. In the rewrite, not the first draft. The first draft I just wrote, but it changed. The ending changed a lot, or the last third. So, yeah, God, yeah.
Are you a fast drafter? I heard that you, in a previous interview, you said you
Yes.
wrote Rouge in like 5 weeks, which is insane.
Yeah,
Is that normal for you?
no, it's not normal. Rouge came very, very quickly. But not, Rouge was very challenging. I mean, it felt like I was writing an opera, which I kind of was.
Yeah,
Um,
a little bit.
but the memory sections, oh my God, I could write those forever. Like I felt that way. When I got into her memories, those were written so quickly, so easily. And the last 100 pages of the book came like that. It was the first half of the book that was a challenge, setting it up. That was what I struggled with, but not at first. At first, I just kind of, I wrote the first draft of it knowing that it had its flaws and that I would figure it out. I had her voice and I knew that. And that's what I do because I'm really superstitious about writing. Very, very, very superstitious. That's why I always come to the same place. I always work in the same apartment. Very, very superstitious about it. I mean, I can work anywhere, but I like to work in this place. I felt like don't lose the momentum of the story, just get it down. Get it down, and then you'll like sink deeper in, and you'll figure out whatever problems you have to figure out, but don't like give up and start nitpicking on sentences. Like, because for me, in my experience, once I start doing that, forget it. I lose the energy, you know? I lose the life. And I don't want to lose the life. I'd rather have the life and have it not be perfect than not have the life and have very perfect sentences.
So what does your current writing process look like then? Have you got like a bit of a ritual that you follow?
So like for We Love You Bunny, I would just wake up super early in the morning. I did this with Rouge too, and I did this with All's Well, so, you know, and with Bunny, frankly. But with more and more, like, you know, permission, I think, as time went on, just wake up and work and have usually a word count that I am trying to hit when I'm generating. There's usually a word count. So it's usually like if I'm really stuck and it's slow going, I don't want to be mean to myself, so I do 1,000 words, which is still hard on days when you're stuck. That I'll do that. If I feel like, oh no, I've got this, I know where I'm going, then it's 2,000. So for We Love You Bunny, it was 2,000, I think I was trying to hit every day to get it done, because I knew it was a longer book.
And then you go and teach during the day?
No, well, no, I can't generate when I'm teaching. I just can't. I can't do that. Some teachers can, I cannot. So when I'm teaching is when I revise. I'll wake up early and I'll look at like a chapter and I'll work on that chapter, and that will be my project. But to generate, I can't have other students' work in my head, and which I take very seriously, and I can't have other texts in my head, which I am teaching. So I'm already deep in the story when I'm revising. I already know it. I know its shape. I know its characters. So I don't need to drop down in quite the same way. I'm not using that part of my brain that just needs no other like interruptions, you know? So when I'm generating, that's why I do it quickly, because I don't have a ton of time. So I try to do it in like, you know, it was 5 weeks for Rouge, yes. For We Love You Bunny, I was on leave. So I worked on it for a number of months. Yeah.
Each of your books tackle really heavy and complex issues, and there's a lot of imagery woven throughout, a lot of metaphor. Is that something you're conscious of during the drafting process or the writing process, or do you layer it in throughout the editing process?
Yeah, usually the images are there in the first draft, and then I amplify them if I want to as I go. Like I see them as I'm reading, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, your subconscious clearly thought that was something. And it is. So play with that, you know, bring it out, use it more. So that they're always there in like a very, very, it might even just be like the most minuscule way in the first draft, like etched, you know, but then I'll kind of dig deeper into them as I go. Yeah, but like, for example, in Rouge, it was all there, you know, the roses, the Egyptian mythology, like, you know, all of those different elements, they were all there from the beginning. 13 Ways has a lot of water imagery. That was something I became conscious of, like, as I was revising, and I drew it out a little bit more. Because water is an interesting mirror, just like it is in Rouge. So yeah, I feel like it's all there in the first draft. Even if you take a wrong turn in terms of plot, it's all there, and you can see it, and you can figure it out by reading it and just being with it, like with a lot of attention.
Do you ever get bored of a story as you're working on it?
That hasn't happened to me yet. I'm trying to think. Has it happened maybe with a story? I don't know. But it hasn't happened with the novels yet. I feel like that's probably inevitable. Like what happens to me more often than not, the challenge thing that happens is like, oh God, I can't do this. I can't write this scene. Like that'll happen. I don't know my way into this, you know. I got to figure out the way in. And then I'll just take a leap and try something, and I don't even know if it's going to work. And then usually that will tell me, oh yeah, okay, no, keep going with this, that's good. Or no, that was the wrong way, try again. Like that happens all the time.
So how do you arrive at a new idea for a novel? Does it come to you as an image or a feeling? And once it's there, how do you start a new art project?
Yeah, it's usually like two things coming together. Like the best example I can think of is All's Well. All's Well, I was in a PhD program, and I was taking a class on Shakespeare, and I had never read All's Well That Ends Well before. And I had such a strong reaction to the main character, like so strong, to Helen, the main character Helen. And I started seeing this director in my head who like had this very particular vision for Helen and for this play. And I was delighted by the idea of this like delusional director. I was like, okay, that sounds fun, like to work on something like that. But I knew that wasn't enough. Like, so what? She wants to direct Helen. Big deal. Like, and then I thought, oh, she'll have a rival, who has another idea. That'll be fun. Okay, there's your tension. And then I still just didn't write it for a while. I was like, no, I'll finish Bunny and I'll just put that one aside. But I was also dealing with chronic pain at the same time. Like dealing with it, really kind of coming to the end of my patience with it. I finished Bunny and I came back to this director idea and I was telling my partner about it and I was like, yeah, I really want to do this, but I feel like something's missing. And I also really want to write about pain. And then it just kind of came together. I was like, oh my God, the theater director has pain. Like, that's going to be it. That's going to be it. And she'll want to put the comedy on, but there's this other play that she's forced to be in spite of herself. She wants the comedy, she wants the romance, but she will live in the tragedy that she doesn't want. And then that's how I figured it out. It was just like, I want to write about pain. I want to write about this director. Oh, the director has pain. Like, that's how it'll happen. They'll stick together. Two things will stick together. And there could be a lot of things floating in my head. Two things will find each other and then they'll end up. It usually doesn't come to me fully formed. Rouge, I think, came out of a real, like, I am obsessed with skincare. This is a horror novel waiting to happen, for sure. And then when I was writing like some early memories, I started writing like this scene with Tom Cruise and I was like, oh, okay. Great. Like, awesome. Yeah, it's really, really weird how it happens, but it usually is two things coming together.
And what's your entry point once you've got that seed?
Well, of course, it's the voice in a particular moment. I usually write the first scene. The first scene that I write is usually the first scene of the book. That has been mostly the case, I think. Yes, mostly the case. All's Well, I wrote her on the floor in pain. And I kind of knew, yeah, that's right. Just be with her in pain, waiting to go downstairs to direct, right? So get those two things going right away. And then with Sam, I knew right away that the first thing we would see would be her at a party alone, looking at these bunnies. So it's usually the character in a moment of powerlessness that I start with. I usually start there. Because for me, that's usually where it's born. Like, it's usually born in that moment of, oh, I'm having like an experience is very different from like the rest of my, the rest of like my peers, or I'm having an experience with this thing that is making me feel like I have no voice and I'm suddenly powerless. I want to put myself back in there and feel like, what will that do? Because there's tension right there, right away. And I like starting from there because that's a place of possibility.
Something I had wanted us to talk about in a bit more detail, but for time's sake, I'll keep it short, is your use of satire. You're so good at satire and writing satire in fiction, which I think is really, really, really hard to land. So whether it's the bunnies or the Shakespeare theatre department, your satire often targets tightly enclosed, hierarchical, all-consuming systems. What draws you to those spaces? Is it about power, performance, absurdity, or something else?
All three of those that you just said, yeah. There's just so much innate power in those, and you are usually lost in the labyrinth of it and can't find your way out. And there often isn't like a single person who is responsible or who can be accountable for it, which is fascinating, right? You just encounter like a number of different characters. You go into like a hospital setting, to get your physical therapy, or you go to see a surgeon. You're dealing with like a whole network in there. And the horror of that and the absurdity of it and the miscommunication, the potential for miscommunication, that's where the satire can come in, is in the absurdity of the system and how labyrinthine it is and unnecessarily complicated and powerful, and also all the opportunity for just not understanding. And yes, you're absolutely right. There's a performance element to it too. Miranda has to perform her pain to be believed, but in performing her pain, she loses belief in it because she knows she's performing it. And then she feels like, of course people don't believe me because I am performing, but I have to perform it in order for you to see it, because it's not something that is visible unless I like show you how it feels. It's such a quandary. And that's all's well that ends well. I do affect a sorrow, but I have it too. That's what Helen literally says. So yeah, I think it's just hilarious to me how much we misunderstand each other. But it's also very sad. But I do find it funny. And finding it funny, I think, is, like I said, it's kind of the way through. It's like, it's the way.
Means of survival.
Yes, it is. It is a tool for survival. It is born of darkness, but naming it creates comedy and allows for survival. Yeah.
You've said that you particularly love writing dialogue.
I do.
I so struggle with dialogue, so that's so interesting to me. But what do you think makes for really great, engaging dialogue in fiction?
Well, it's believability, right? It's the buy-in. It's just like, for me, it's just what we say to each other, and how we can misunderstand each other, and how there are all these like subtext in what people say. There's all this potential subtext, that might not necessarily get addressed, but it's there, right? If you want to hear it. I think that's hysterical. Like, the degree to which our true wants and fears and all the things we hate about ourselves, like all of that is actually on display in our dialogue all the time, whether we are aware of it or not. And usually we're not that aware. And I just find that so funny. Like, that's why I delight in it. Because I feel like we truly do reveal ourselves in dialogue. And it's fun. It's like, I really loved acting when I was a kid. I loved it so much. I loved theater. I loved skits, Like, I love the fun of it and the improvisation and where something can go, And so, like, the possibilities between two people talking to each other is just, to me, is immense. And so, yeah, people are hilarious when they talk to each other, and I just love picking that up and playing with it. But it is hard. It's hard, and it's like you once you kind of get into it, it becomes really fun. But you have to like get into it, It might be useful to like do dialogue with, like, what I would do sometimes is dialogue with like a character that your character kind of loathes, but they don't know that your character loathes them. What kind of conversation would they have? Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah. It's like a character thing. It's like a voice thing. It's an extension of voice. It's like you do this stuff with your character in your head. You've got your character who's like in their head. And then you put them in dialogue, you kind of learn more about who they are. Like, what do they pick up on that the other person is saying? And like really leaning into that, I think it can be helpful.
Lucky last question.
Okay.
The one thing I'd love to hear from you is, what do you hope readers take away from your work? Well,
ultimately, like, the books are written as kind of like a hand just like reaching out. So I hope that they connect with the characters. I hope that they connect with the fact that the book is really about love, because I do think that ultimately We Love You, Bunny is about love. I want them to feel less alone. I want them to feel delighted, and I want them to feel connected to these people that are fictional, but that hopefully feel real. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's such an honor to talk to you. I'm a huge fan, and I love everything. I will read anything you write ever. I love it. And you've really inspired me too, in terms of showing me what's possible with fiction and playing with different genres and not being afraid to experiment and play with surrealism. So I'm just in awe of you. I think you're a modern day genius, and definitely rightfully Margaret Atwood's literary heir apparent. So huge honor. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope everybody goes and reads We Love You, Bunny.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. This was such a pleasure. Your questions were wonderful. I love this conversation. So thank you. It's an honor. You're a dream reader. It's a dream response. Yeah, so thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Sick Sad Lit. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really loved it, leaving a quick review helps other readers and writers find the show. And if you want to keep the conversation going, come hang out with us in the Sick Sad Friends Discord book club. Come for the books, stay for the friends. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Until next time, thanks for listening.